Hello, everyone. We're starting a new module today, and it's module number 18. We are working on basically the 90s, and it has 5 lessons, so we're going to put it over 2 weeks. So with 5 lessons, we'll just cover one lesson module at a time. So that'll be cool. The 90s are a fun decade to study. A lot went on in the 90s, and I'm excited. I'm excited. The week-long assignment is the terms, so make sure you get the terms done. A little bit less than last week. Last week's terms were quite a few. This one isn't quite as much. Um, and then next week we'll have the test and a second week-long assignment. No, so this week there's no test. If you didn't get the stuff turned in from last module, week number 11, get that done as soon as you can this week so you get the most points possible. This week there will be, for first and third periods, 3 lessons, and this week for periods 2 and 4 there are only 2 lessons. So, and that changes next week. It's reversed. So I'm kind of getting used to this schedule. It's another schedule, huh? We've had so many of them. I'm ready to go. The first lesson is called the Clinton years. So give me a sec to get my stuff here together. I'll give you a sec. So it is 18.1, the Clinton years. The Clinton years. Okay, Bill Clinton, Bill Jefferson Clinton. An interesting subject. Our first note is Bill Clinton. He served as Attorney General of Arkansas, and at the age of only 32, became governor of Arkansas. So his roots, his heritage is back to Arkansas. He went to Yale University and went to Georgetown University, got his graduate, and then he went to Yale to get law degree. And that's where he met Hillary Clinton, his wife. So, his background is pretty strong, pretty smart guy. He defeated George W. Bush in the 1992 election, becoming the third youngest president ever. Re-elected in 1996, so he's a 2-term Democratic president. The first one we've had since Roosevelt. The first 2-term president to be a Democrat since Roosevelt. So Bill Clinton, the president for most of the 90s, and will be an interesting president for us to study today. All right, so our first note was Bill Clinton. Bill Jefferson Clinton, major president in the 90s. Oh yeah, our second note are the reforms that he brought out. Reforms. One of Clinton's big pushes was medical care. He really wanted to make medical care affordable for everyone. It's kind of the beginnings of Obamacare here. It never really got through Congress. He could not get Congress to agree on a massive medical overhaul. Medical care is a big issue, and it's a controversial issue. One of President Trump's big things was to get rid of Obamacare, and he was partially successful. Clinton was seeking that type of a medical plan. The Brady Bill was passed after the assassination. One of the men who was crippled by the assassination attempt on President Reagan, James Brady. It greatly restricted firearm sales. Background checks were made mandatory. And by 2009, the bill had blocked the sale of over 2 million weapons. The Brady Bill would be your second note. He made a real attempt to modify welfare. Clinton was a conservative Democrat, not quite the progressive, and he worked hand in hand with the Republicans on a number of issues, this being one of them. He wanted to reform welfare to make welfare People have to work if they were possibly able to. Gave states the ability to block welfare distribution. Um, he tried to make a lot of reforms. This one worked partially. Um, so your three notes would be: number one, medical care. He got it started, the idea of national medical care, but it did not get off the ground during his presidency. Reforms to gun laws did take effect with the Brady Bill. Reforms to welfare, he worked with the Republicans on that, and that did not get off the ground as well as he intended, but it did work in many states. Okay, our second note were the reforms of President Clinton. Okay, our third note is foreign policy. Foreign policy. One of the big issues in the 90s was Yugoslavia. This former Soviet republic, it's that one case where the Soviets, when they left, when the control of the Iron Curtain left, it fell apart. It's the area of 5 different ethnic, racial, religious groups, and it just became a hotbed for civil war and violence. The old country of Yugoslavia. Internal cleansings, expelling people, killing people in genocide. Clinton in 1995 sent U.S. troops in to try to police the area. More violence ensued. And we remained in Yugoslavia for a long time, and the different republics that it broke into, Croatia and the different republics. So his first issue was the civil war in Yugoslavia. The second issue was in Africa, in Somalia. What was happening there was a genocide of people, just killing thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the country of Somalia. Clinton sent in 5,000 troops to try to stop the violence there, to try to bring in humanitarian aid. His second issue was dealing with the mass genocide in Somalia. The next one was trying to work again with the Israelis and Pakistan this time. We saw before how President Carter had worked with the Israelis, cooperating with Egypt. And in this case, Clinton is trying to get Israel to cooperate with Palestine. Oslo Accords, 1993. So the notes we have so far: Clinton dealing with Yugoslavia violence, Clinton dealing with Africa, and we have Clinton also working with the Israelis and the Palestinians. The only other thing, in 94, Clinton sent in U.S. troops into Haiti. Haiti shares an island with the Dominican Republic, and a lot of poverty in Haiti. So Clinton and foreign policy, dealing with issues in the 90s. Okay, our fourth note is a Republican Congress. Republican Congress. Newt Gingrich became a major spokesman for the Republican Party. He is an opponent of Clinton, and his Contract for America was bringing to light conservative issues in the face of a pretty strong and powerful Democratic president. Congress on both houses, for the first time in many, many years, went to the Republican Party, and it was something Clinton had to deal with during his 8 years, not having cooperation, at least full cooperation of Congress. It's a little bit not as bad as it could have been, because Clinton was a moderate Democrat at best. Clashes between Clinton and the Congress were frequent. The two sides did not cooperate on a number of issues. And we had a couple of government shutdowns during the Clinton years because neither side would budge on spending issues. Okay, our fourth note was the Republican Congress. Republican Congress. Okay, our fifth note is the 1996 election. 1996 election. Here, Clinton runs against Bob Dole of Kansas. The other candidate was H. Ross Perot. Now, Perot, Perot, had run also in the election of 1992, and he got a lot of votes in 92. 96, he didn't quite get the publicity. He's a little bit like Trump, an outsider, a rich man. This man from Texas, H. Ross Perot. He's one of your terms, and he'll be on the test. And he lost twice to Clinton. The second time wasn't as big of an impact as the first time. So, like I said before, with that election in 1996, Clinton became the first two-term Democratic president since Roosevelt in the 1930s and 40s. All right, my fifth note was the election of 1996. My sixth note is Clinton impeached. Clinton impeached. The impeachment of Bill Clinton is the first impeachment since Andrew Johnson, following after Lincoln. So it had been a long time. What had happened was, and I'm not saying it's all wrong, Clinton was being watched closely as president. There were a number of people who had heard things about his lifestyle, and he was being watched closely. Clinton had an affair with an intern named Monica Lewinsky over a few months period. And Lewinsky, to make a long story short, publicized the events. Initially, Clinton said, no, I did not have an affair with that woman. And he did it under oath in a different trial. Now, that's going to come back to bite him in the butt because the president perjured himself in a public trial. The House of Representatives impeached Clinton on 3 counts, and then it went to the Senate, where the Senate acquitted him. The Senate, in order to get rid of a president, as we've learned with Trump, needs 2/3 of the Senate to agree, and they didn't agree. They did not agree. And so Clinton became the second U.S. president to be impeached and the second to not be taken out of office. So it all dealt not with the sex as much, although that was in the press a lot. This whole thing, like Watergate, took a long time. And the guy's name who really, we saw how the 2 reporters carried the Watergate scandal when no one else would. His name was Kenneth Starr. He was an investigator. And Kenneth Starr really carried this home. And so Clinton got impeached, not for the sex, but for lying under oath about the events. Clinton went on TV at one point and apologized for his behavior. His popularity never really went down. As we're going to see in the next couple notes, there are reasons for that, but he did lie under oath, and he was the second president to be impeached. Okay, our note there was the impeachment of Bill Clinton. That is our sixth note. Okay, our seventh note is the economy in the 90s. The economy in the 90s. Here is why Clinton's popularity did not go down. He was presided over booming economy in the 1990s. Unemployment down, investments up, trade, GNP up. We even had budget surpluses during the 1990s. The price of oil was stable. We saw how that had hurt both Presidents Nixon and President Ford and President Carter. The economy had some of its historic years in the 1990s. This is the period called monetarism, when it really wasn't Clinton running the economics of America. He had turned it over to the Federal Reserve chairman. In this case, it was Alan Greenspan. And so while Greenspan was weaving the magic for an economic miracle in the 90s, he didn't get the credit. It was Clinton. So when I say Clinton's popularity, even after the scandal didn't go down, that's one of the big reasons, the booming economy of the 1990s. And that is our 7th note. Our 8th note is, I called it high tech. High tech. Technology, high tech. The 90s are the year technology really took off in so many different ways. From Bill Gates with Microsoft to Steve Jobs with Apple to Michael Dell with Dell Computers. Napster, the first digital music sharing platform. It got in some trouble, but it's the first. It was kind of the pioneer in massive digital music, Napster. Cell phones. We saw in the Rodney King beatings in 1991 where someone had a video of it from their phone. And it brought justice for Rodney King in a later trial, and it brought riots across Los Angeles. We're getting, in the 90s, we get satellite dishes for television. So many different things. The internet really establishes itself as the dominant form of communication. And with the internet, it brought a lot of things with it. There's an anonymous nature of internet that's both good and bad. It freed up people and groups to communicate, perhaps who had not had that chance before. I'm thinking here especially of the gay community, the LGBTQ plus community. Just had never had the opportunity to communicate like that before. There was the murder of a young gay man in Wyoming, Shepherd, and it brought publicity around the world where perhaps that would have been stifled and stopped in an earlier age. High tech was our note. It's really the booming decade for high tech, making the world a lot like what it is right now. Okay, our next note is international trade. International trade. President Bush had tried to get NAFTA, N-A-F-T-A, National Free Trade Agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. North American Free Trade Agreement. It didn't get through. The barriers between us and the Canadians have never been that great, but the barriers between Canada and Mexico, U.S. and Mexico, were really what brought NAFTA into the picture, and it's still there today. President Trump criticized it a great deal and tried to get out of it, but we're still in it. NAFTA, Clinton was able to bring that home. Clinton, I don't know how you're going to feel about it. President Trump criticized it a great deal. Clinton really brought us into a trade agreement with China that where we are today. He gave China favorable trade status. And by the end of his term is when the Chinese products start coming into our country in massive numbers. Cheaper for the consumer. What we see, though, however, in the negative of that is the outsourcing of jobs. Jobs who used to be here for people in America now are Chinese workers building the same products in China, and the American workers lose their job. There's good and bad to that relationship with China, isn't there? But it's really Clinton, whether you criticize it or like it, who brought that home. International trade. International trade was our 9th note. Our last note is terrorism. Now, we're not quite at 9/11, but there was some disasters in the 90s. The bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building by 2 Americans who were upset at American policies, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. And it was just massive bombing of that building, killed many people, including a lot of children. The World Trade Center, which was later brought down by two airplanes, was bombed in the 90s also, a basement bombing there. Our troops in Saudi Arabia waters were hit. The USS Cole was hit by suicide boats that came up to it. There was a lot of terrorism in the 90s. And the last note for the whole day is this is really when bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, starts becoming a figure in world politics. He starts establishing his Al-Qaeda network. They're ultimately going to be the ones who attack us on 9/11. And Clinton was after them early in the 90s. Now, he couldn't get them, a lot like George W. Bush couldn't find him, but we were after him. We were hunting him down. He was dedicated to bringing America down. He didn't like America's role in the Middle East, especially with troops in Saudi Arabia, which we do have. Our role is supporting Israel. So we develop an opponent in the 90s who's gonna attack us, Osama bin Laden. So our 10th note of terrorism, the Oklahoma City bombing, the bombing of the World Trade Center in the basement, killing 111 people. The USS Cole attacked in waters off Saudi Arabia. A lot of sailors were killed there. And then finally, the hunt for bin Laden begins. Okay, those are my notes for Module 18.1, the Clinton years. So you've got this, you've got 4 activities to do. I think you'll like the activities. One of them's the top movies of the 90s. And get those turned in. And we're getting close to the end, you guys. I've got progress reports I have to turn in on Tuesday. And that's the last progress report before the final grades and the end of the school year. So I hope you guys are all doing well. Email me any questions or anything I can do to help you. And I don't mind the grade questions. Larson, what about my grade? Your grade is too important, so don't hold back. If you have questions about things, I make mistakes. So I'll do anything I can to help you. I'll tell you the truth, though. I mean, if you're too far away, you may want to pick another class to try to work on your makeup work. But I'll help you if I can. Have a great day, you guys. That was lesson 1 of week 12, module 18.